So after that Nintendo Direct, obviously, I've got a whole lot of games to cover. I'm absolutely scrambling, just coming up with videos for all of these different games. But the very first one that I want to talk about is Echoes of Wisdom. And that's because out of all of these games, I have the most to say about this one. Just like several times over, I got so many more individual opinions to to communicate about this one. You know, like Metroid Prime 4, that's my big one. That's the thing I'm the most excited about. I just got a lot to say about Zelda. I'm very opinionated about Zelda, and I do want to start this by saying I'm very excited for this game. I kind of have a lot of kind of criticisms and worries about it, but please understand that despite that, I am going to spend a pretty okay amount of this video going over what I'm worried about, but know that I am excited. I am so overwhelmingly pleased that this game exists, and I cannot wait to play it, and I'm so pleased. It's coming in 3 months. 3 months. That's like no time at all to wait. I'm gonna blink and it's gonna be here, and I really seriously can't wait. So I mean, like, yeah, like first let's just go over the good stuff. This is a 2D Zelda game, so that's cool. I am a humongous fan of 2D Zelda, and I have been waiting a very, very, very long time for a new 2D Zelda. I don't know what happened at Nintendo. I don't know what changed their mindset, because it used to be that 3D Zelda and 2D Zelda, those were both things that were always coming. There were always both. It was the home console and the handheld, and at one time they were coming really regularly. But then the 3DS came around and we just got one original for that whole kind of generation. It's like, yeah, okay. And then the Switch generation, we got a Link's Awakening remake, but that's it. We've not had an original one. It has been so long since Link Between Worlds, and it's been really disappointing, especially because, as we will talk about in a bit here, you know, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, 3D Zelda is kind of going in a direction, and so it kind of feels like we need 2D Zelda more than ever right now, and it's so weird that it's taken this long, but it's finally here. It is finally here, and I would just, final time, I will say, totally predicted it. Just gonna pat myself on the back there. Totally predicted that's what we would see at the Direct. Got it right. Sometimes I'm right. But yeah, just the fact that we're getting one, I'm so pleased. I love 2D Zelda so much. The Oracle games and Minish Cap in particular, and so getting a new one's great. And then of course, it's a Zelda game. It's a Zelda game. I've been begging for this for just forever, and it's finally happening after all these years. No, I'm not counting the CDI one. Stop. We get it. We get it. She had the game on the CDI or whatever. We get it. This is the first real Zelda game. For a slight downer, I will say that making the first Zelda game a 2D game is a little bit disappointing, because it's very safe. It's a very safe way to play with the character. It would have been a lot scarier and more difficult to do like a 3D game, you know, like actually like a 3D Zelda game, but it stars Zelda and it's about her as a character and uses all of her unique strengths, and maybe she's got magic spells, and maybe it's 3D, but the gameplay is different. That would have been a lot more brave, and I think that would have been a lot more cool. This is very safe, but I get it. I get it. Nintendo does often like to be safe sometimes. And it's still cool. We're getting a Zelda game. A Zelda game. And I don't know, I almost feel like I should have seen it coming, that a Zelda game would be a 2D game. It's a concept. I don't even know why I didn't think of it. I always imagined it being a 3D game with Sheik and all that stuff. I should have expected that, yeah, a 2D Zelda game is a perfect fit for Zelda, because it's safer, because it's easier to implement, and because it's very cute. And the other positive is just like, what a wild concept. It's not even just a Zelda game. They didn't go like, what kind of powers would Zelda have? What kind of weapons would she wield? No, they went with something wacky, something off the wall. She can just have copies of items, just kind of like whatever item you can find in the world, you can copy it and just reproduce it. And you can just kind of reproduce them whenever and wherever you want and use those to solve problems in whatever way that you want. It's weird. It's one of those very strange concepts I feel like I would have never come up with, and yet now that I see it, I'm like, I can't wait to get my hands on it. I cannot wait to play with it and just kind of explore the game and these options and just kind of like what they do, what kinds of opportunities they open up. I want to see what kinds of interactions we can create. I want to see kind of where this system's limitations are. So that's all very fun. But now we are going to get into the more like kind of mixed / worried territory. I'm going to start with I'm going to really try to go quick here. I'm going to try not to dwell on this. It's the art style. I was one of the only people in the world that did not like the art style with Link's Awakening. I don't want it to be toys. I don't like that it's toys. To me, that was a dream. You don't dream in toys. Toys is like a kid playing with toys, but everything looked like plastic. But I get it, okay, if that's an interpretation of that dream world, that's one thing. And I was scared. I was scared that it wouldn't just be because it was Link's Awakening and it was a dream world. I was afraid that when we finally got a new 2D Zelda, it would look like Link's Awakening Remake. And I was right. And I'm bummed about that. Because now it's just, I don't know, 2D Zelda is toys. Why though? Why is it toys? This is a fantasy world. Why is it made of plastic? There's no actual reason for it now. Apparently this is just their modern interpretation of 2D Zelda and sort of a continuation of the Link Between Worlds style, except it just feels more homogenized. It's less creative. It is more challenging, but ultimately more rewarding to give us an art style that just looks good on its own. But plastic? Why? Why is it plastic? Why is this world made of plastic? Why do the trees look like plastic? Again, it's a fantasy world. It's not toys. I'm not a kid playing with toys. This is a real place. This 2D Zelda is not a lesser Zelda than 3D Zelda. It's not a pretend Zelda. It's good in its own way, and so that's why and like the sprites just looking like 3D interpretations of an 8-bit sprite. Why though? Why are we still imitating sprite work? This is its own thing with its own identity. Don't make it look like a 3D version of an 8-bit sprite. Make it look like what you would make the character look like today with modern technology. Anyway, try to stop because I know I'm in the minority. Most people like it. I'm just kind of moving past it. I'm ignoring it. I don't hate it. It is pleasant to look at. It is cute in its own way. So it's not bad. It doesn't make me hate the game. I'm just kind of annoyed by it, and I wouldn't do it if I were making the game, but whatever, I will live. Try not to count that too hard against the game. Something that I am a little bit more worried about. Still, you know, I'm cautiously optimistic here, but this map, as many people have pointed out, looks very similar to the Link to the Past map. A lot of the same landmarks and rock formations and things, and it's like Link Between Worlds was however many years ago. I already did not like that they kind of more or less reused the map from Link to the Past. They altered it a lot, but it was still just like, this is kind of the same map. They're not really doing that again, are they? It was disappointing way back then. What was that, 10 years ago? They're not really going to do it again, right? They're not actually. Like, I mean, maybe there's just similarities because they do want this to be kind of a, you know, it's Zelda's first game, so they don't want to give her like a really weird place. They want her to be in Hyrule, so maybe it's just very similar. They wanted it to feel familiar, but hopefully it's still its own version of Hyrule because, like, really don't. Please don't tell me you're using the same map again. I'll be very, that will hurt. If we find out that it's more or less the same map again, just remixed again, that will kind of hurt. And it's also, like, you really can't judge the story based on the opening, like, cutscene, but the story kind of worries me too. I don't like this idea that 2D Zelda is just kind of like lesser. It just doesn't matter as much. So, whatever. It's just kind of Link fighting Ganon again. You know, this is Link and then just like that traditional Link to the Past Ganon, and they're fighting, and it's just kind of like, usually the games do have a reason why he's there. The games acknowledge that they like more or less killed Ganon, and you know, they'll be trying to resurrect him or like channel him or something. Here, just starting with, I don't know, Link is fighting Ganon. I hope there's a good reason. I really hope that there is more to this story. You know, I'm trying not to be too pessimistic about it. There's that very worried little part of me that just sees Nintendo being like, I don't know, who cares? It doesn't matter at all. Link was fighting his nemesis Ganon one day, and then it turns out Zelda is the protagonist, and here she is in the most basic version of Hyrule we've reused a bunch of times, and who cares? It just doesn't matter. That's the attitude that we're starting to kind of get from Nintendo kind of recently. Breath of the Wild felt like it was kind of setting the stage, kind of like laying the groundwork for a pretty exciting new take on Zelda, and then Tears of the Kingdom just kind of didn't care about any of that and ended up just telling a kind of just another story and really kind of ignoring the greater canon. And that's, I mean, again, that's another very big whole discussion for another day, Nintendo's take on Zelda's story and how, you know, they say it really doesn't matter, we're just going to tell the same story over and over again. But then, like, even that, it gets kind of stale. And they once said that Zelda was their story series. If you want stories in Nintendo games, that's what Zelda's for. But now they're starting to not even care there, and I don't want that, like, story apathy to bleed into this game. But again, I really don't know. All we had was a trailer. There could be a whole entire plot. Link Between Worlds kind of looked basic on the surface, but it had a plot. It had stuff going on. This game probably will too. It's just there's a certain simplicity to it that I'm not a big fan of, because like, I want to see a game that's really from Zelda's perspective, rather than just having Zelda as the protagonist being the kind of basic twist, and it's otherwise the same game. And you know, I don't really like the idea that whenever you have the damsel in distress, but she's actually the protagonist, she has to be saving the hero, at least the first time, you know, the first Princess Peach game. Well, of course she had to fight Bowser and save Mario, because that's how you flip the trope on its head. And it was only in Peach's next game, Showtime, where she got to actually have her own game. Mario wasn't even in the picture, and she's fighting a brand new villain. That's the place that I want to be now, and it's kind of frustrating being at this first step after all these years. If Zelda gets a game, it has to be in Hyrule, and she has to be fighting Ganon and saving Link. It's just kind of boring. It's very vanilla, you know? And it kind of says even more about Nintendo's desire to kind of like play it safe as far as story and characters go. She has to be saving Link. Link has to be there. Did you notice that Link is bigger than her on the cover? Like they had to make sure that Link was visible on the cover. We don't even know if he'll be like a part of the story or if she's really just trying to save him or what, but they had to make sure that he was represented on the cover. He's even bigger than she is. She's a little more prominent because she's not like faded out a little bit, but still, they're like, nope, you gotta make sure that Link is right there. In fact, let's make him just a little bit bigger than Zelda, because we don't want to scare people off. We want people to know this is a Zelda game. Link is involved in some way, because we have very little faith in this IP's ability to sell itself when it is a little bit too different. It's kind of like how Super Mario Bros. Wonder was very interesting and very creative, but the cover still almost looked exactly like a new Super Mario Brothers game. It had to, you know, like it had to show off the really basic, just like Mario and Luigi and Peach, and they're just like, "Ooh, here we are. Here's a couple new power-ups or whatever." Anyway, it's a whole thing. Really, I told you, I got a lot of opinions about this. So I'm not really a big fan of that. I want a Zelda game to really be a Zelda game, and not just a brief, fun little ride where Link throws her the keys and she gets to have a little bit of fun, and then she has to give them back. And really the only unique thing you have here is the mechanics. And if you want to go really deep, even that is kind of like, well, we can't just have Zelda be Zelda. We can't have her have abilities that kind of suit her personality and her whole like kind of identity. We have to give her something really wacky and really, really different so that this doesn't even play like a Zelda game. I would have been really happy if she just had spells. You know, Link has a sword and a shield and little items, and what if she had various spells and it still just played like a Zelda game, just with a different moveset? I think that would have been really cool, but they were like, no, if it's a Zelda game, it's gotta be it can't even play like a normal Zelda game, so I don't know. But really that right there, let's segue into that, into kind of looking at the concept. Because out of all the things that kind of worry me about this game, it is that concept. Even though I said I'm also excited about it. That's why you can be excited and worried about a thing. I can see the potential, and I can really want to play with it, and I can, you know, I can say it might end up being really cool. But I am simultaneously kind of very worried. It's like the initial hype was really, really huge, but kind of like the longer I've had to chew on it, it's starting to really set in what this game might end up being. So let's go back to the beginning of this video where I'm talking about 2D Zelda's place in the Zelda series. Right now, there is a war raging within the Zelda fandom. There's kind of like, you've got the side that's a really big fan of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, this new open world, open structure, this modern Zelda, and then you've got all the people who are really missing the old kind of Zelda, because Zelda used to be about really tightly designed dungeons, really just like good, meticulously thought out structures. You know, these games are like puzzle boxes inside of puzzle boxes. And 3D Zelda had a lot of this design, at least in the dungeons, for a long time, but even then, all the stuff in between the dungeons was a little bit less about the raw gameplay and more about just like the feel of riding a horse around and going on an adventure. So even then, you had some people who were way more into 2D Zelda. No, it is tight, it is refined, there is no wasted time. But now this divide has gotten even bigger, where now Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, even like I love Breath of the Wild and I love Tears of the Kingdom, but even I am starting to miss that more tightly designed Zelda, because like having a problem that you can solve in a number of ways is cool in its own way. But, you know, I made a whole entire video on this, how like Aonuma seems to think that that is superior to the old way when it is not. They're two different things. And it's frustrating the more that he talks about these things, and the more it seems clear that he just seems to want to leave the old way behind completely. And to a lot of people, that's leaving behind what made Zelda, Zelda. And like I said, even I am starting to miss that, even in the 3D games. Like, there is something to be said for an open-ended problem, but then there is also something to be said for a tightly designed puzzle with one solution, and when you solve it, you feel really great. You feel like a genius. It's these constant little hits of dopamine as you solve these problems. I thought the more open-ended dungeons in Breath of the Wild were pretty cool, but then in Tears of the Kingdom, I was a little bit more disappointed by them, missing the old way. And so it's like I said, more than ever, we need 2D Zelda now. Because 2D Zelda is the polar opposite of modern 3D Zelda. Okay, if you're gonna say, this is the way Zelda's going, it's gonna be open, all these like open solutions, and you have a bunch of tools and you can use them however you want. That's what 3D Zelda is now. I don't believe that that's the way it should be forever. I think you can strike a more happy medium, but even if you're gonna say that's the way that it is, okay, fine. Then give us some traditional 2D Zelda experiences. We need those now more than ever. I say it again. The people who are looking for that classic, tightly designed Zelda experience, they need 2D Zelda, and you are not delivering it, and it's getting weirder and weirder the further we go. And so now, we are finally here. They've finally done it. You know, Tears of the Kingdom is like a year old now, and really a tremendous number of people I have seen are really kind of turning on this new formula and really not liking it. I mean, you know, big school of people who are like, no, Tears of the Kingdom is amazing, and I do think that it's amazing, but just more than ever, you've got people who want the old way, and 2D Zelda was an opportunity to deliver that to them, and for Aonuma to come on and be like, hey, everybody, here's a new 2D Zelda, except this one also carries that philosophy of how about you have all of these different tools and you can solve every problem in any way that you want. And that is really, really scary. The longer I've had to think about it, to chew on the idea, the more I have realized that's really scary. Because 2D Zelda's strength is in its tight design, in its problems that really only have one solution. But it's tricky to come up with that solution, and you have to work it out. That's what makes it so satisfying. It is the antidote to the open world Zelda blues. It is the balance. It is the reason that you can have both. But if he takes that quality out of 2D Zelda, then that one is just sad because it's just a missed opportunity to deliver the kind of Zelda experience that a lot of people have been wishing for. But then two, the implications are even scarier because does that mean that Aonuma is like, oh no, you don't understand. We are leaving behind the old way completely. Even 2D Zelda has to be open-ended, has to have this open format. Even 2D Zelda is now going to lack that tight design that you used to love. That's a scary idea. That is a terrifying idea, and I've said it before. Aonuma, he's one of the really good ones. He's really proven that he's one of the ones who's like, no, I care about good games first and foremost. Nah, there's no ego here. I'm gonna make amazing games. I'm gonna learn from my mistakes and make the best games possible. So now to see him going down this road where he's like, this is what Zelda is, this is what Zelda has to be, and a tremendous, humongous amount of the fan base is like, no, that's not all we want. You are refusing to see the value in this other thing. It's a little scary. It's a little bit scary. If I get this new game and it doesn't have these really cool, tightly designed dungeons, and instead I'm just like, what do I do with this puzzle? I don't know, I'll put a chair. Hey, that worked. You know, if every single time I want to fight a bad guy, I'm spawning a rock to throw at it, or just spawning a different bad guy and watching them fight, sure, there's a satisfaction there. There's a satisfaction to being like, do you think this will work? Wow, look at that, it totally worked. That is cool, but like, the whole like open-ended thing, it's cool in its own way, but it's not a replacement, and sometimes it kind of feels, you know, it's wide as an ocean, deep as a puddle. Tears of the Kingdom has taught me that I can engage with that kind of problem solving to a point, and then I kind of get tired of it. And then it starts to feel like, okay, what do I spawn? What thing do I use? How do I staple these things together? Oh, look, table worked again. You know, that's disappointing. When I play a 2D Zelda game, I want to dive in and I want to start tackling these puzzle boxes and just turning them over in my hands and figuring out all the little bits and pieces and then solving them and just feeling amazing. And we might not get that with Echoes of Wisdom. And if we don't, then I would say that the state of the Zelda series is in an even worse place than I originally thought when Aonuma started saying all that stuff about Tears of the Kingdom. So I'll stop there. I've gone on enough about this game. We only have to wait 3 months to find out for ourselves, so I should just reserve any further judgment until I get it in my own 2 hands, because ultimately I don't know what the game is going to be like, what kind of format it's going to have. For all I know, it'll be just as perfectly designed. It'll be everything as satisfying as any other 2D Zelda, despite the openness of the system. Maybe it's the best of both worlds. I do not know. Zelda's finally getting a game, though. And whatever else you can say about it, that right there, that's cool. That is cool, man.